Paperback Rocker, episode 57.
Hey, this is Matt Severson, the Paperback Rocker, and I'm broadcasting from my 6x9 foot cinder block shack in the desert of northern Mexico, southern Texas. Welcome and thanks for checking out my show.
Anyone for Earl Grey?
Hey everybody, what's up? It's your old friend Matt, the Paperback Rocker, back again with my little podcast. And I am going to continue here reading from Blue Whiskey, my book. And I'm starting at the bottom of page 6 if you're following along. Excuse me. Like most twins, Temperance and I were constant companions growing up. Oops, I've got to start the clock. Let me just start over. Like most twins, Temperance and I were constant companions growing up, but we did not appreciate each other's company much. It's rare that identical twins like Temp and me, It's rare that identical twins are hostile to each other, but it does happen in fraternal twins like Temp and me. But like a family that is constantly at one another's throats can become unified when battling the neighbors, Temperance and I became like rabid badgers when either of us was threatened. During the rare periods in which we got along, we called ourselves the S and T twins, which came from our initials but also our birth order in the alphabetical sense. I believe the reason we didn't get along well most of the time was Temperance's debilitating jealousy of my being born first. I never understood it, but that was probably because I was first. Why people want to be the first twin born or the first person to cross a bridge, I will never know. That's a coincidence, not an achievement. Temperance was always gunning for me because I was first, like I'd planned it or something. Temperance screamed continuously until she was 3.5. At which time she suddenly became eerily silent. I rarely cried and never threw tantrums in my early years. I was a rational child from birth, just like my father, and understood that seeking attention in such a manner as Temperance was a pointless expenditure of energy, not to mention I could never outperform her. I instinctively knew that would be a waste of both time and effort. Being always in close proximity to my explosive sibling, I evolved. I became able to tune out even her loudest outbursts. This learned skill has served me well throughout my life. It's allowed me to sleep through orgiastic parties on tour buses when I didn't feel like participating, and also come in handy in less orgiastic situations. Like many twins, Temperance and I are violently competitive. And unlike most twins, Temperance and I have never been cheerleaders for each other. Quite the opposite, in fact. Identical twins in particular are prone to near constant mutual adoration and affirmation. For example, after coming in 4th and 5th in a foot race, you might hear a duo of twins say, "Great job, Dwayne," and "You were awesome, Wayne." To clarify, most twins are competitive with each other, but challenge the rest of the world as a duo. Temperance and I wouldn't be caught dead behaving in such a manner. Not once did anybody even suspect us of being any kind of twins at all. We dressed differently, acted differently, and did everything possible to individualize ourselves as soon as we were self-aware. Our battles with each other are amusing looking back. It started around the age of 4, when we were old enough to count to 100, race around the block, say the alphabet, drink water competitively, run up and down the stairs, and so on ad infinitum. Some of those examples had who will puke first side bets. Our clashes grew ever more trivial and grotesque over the next decade. Get a drink here. In addition to these mutually chosen and accepted challenges, my sister and I were pitted against each other in other endeavors by outside forces, in areas we would have otherwise cared nothing about. Piano lessons, for example, became ear-splitting races up and down the scales, and ever faster versions of the songs we were ordered to learn each week. If my piano practicing would have been captured on a recording, one would think I was inventing the genre of music known as speed metal, and I'm talking about songs like Lavender's Blue. This unsophisticated noise did nothing but drive my father deeper into his literary sanctuary. My sister and I were eventually ordered to choose different musical instruments due to our outrageous displays of musical competition, which I now compare to wooden ships on the high seas broadsiding each other with cannons. Temperance decided to stick with the piano, shrewdly choosing the instrument she had already learned the basics of. I chose the guitar and was soon the owner of a beaten-up old nylon string acoustic, the quietest of the species, with which I could not compete with the volume of my sister's piano. It made sense, I guess, because she was always the loudest of the two of us. Learning to play an instrument was expected. It was seen as something of worth by our father, one of the many invisible merit badges we were always pursuing to gain his validation. Temperance continued her lessons with our regular teacher and finally began to develop some nuance in her playing, since I was for the time being stuck in frustrated silence. For once she wasn't pounding the keys like a jackhammer. Listening to her practices when she was still competing with me made one wonder where the pneumatic hose was attached. The best thing about nylon strings is how easy they are on the fingers, especially for beginners who have yet to develop thick calluses. A steel string acoustic will leave a newbie's digits bloodied, and the electric guitar isn't much better. Playing a nylon string is a warm experience by comparison. The instrument never feels like an enemy. It was a wonderful way to attain my foundation on the guitar, and I was able to learn the theory of the instrument in a pain-free manner, which any guitarist reading this will appreciate. The only problem was that I had no guitar instructor. My father, not being a musician himself, thought my slight knowledge of music theory on the piano would be enough to get me off and running on the sixth string. It wasn't. I didn't even know how to tune the thing. My sister relished the first month of my new pursuit, flourishing on her instrument while I plucked shyly at mine, feeling retarded. All I could successfully accomplish was picking out simple melodies like Three Blind Mice on a single string, since the collective strings were not coordinated by a unified tuning. One day as I was plinking along, listening to Temperance kill it on the vertical grand in the living room, my father came to my bedroom, accompanied by a dark-skinned old man who carried a guitar case like mine. My father said, "Stanton, this is Andres Segovia Torres, first Marquis of Salobreña. He's giving a concert at the university this afternoon, and he's offered to give you a guitar lesson as a personal favor to me. Pay attention and be on your best behavior." I stood and offered my chair to the old man, who sat down, smiling politely. I sat on my bed. My father closed the door and went to his study, where he no doubt installed his earplugs and read. I was impressed, thinking how important my father must be to have a marquis come to our house to give me a private guitar lesson. I had no idea what a marquis was, but it sounded important. "Give to me," the olive-skinned man with the horn-rimmed glasses said, extending his hand toward the guitar I held. I had never been around a man from a foreign country, and his gruff manner of speaking kind of scared me. He pulled the instrument from my hands with surprising strength. He strummed it and made a face like he was smelling something rotten. "Dios mío," he mumbled. It took some time for him to wrestle the thing into standard tuning. Tuning a guitar that is only slightly out of sorts can be done in a minute or two, but one that is severely out of kilter, like mine was, can take some time, since there is no reference point. Imagine it like herding sheep that start out close together compared to a herd spread out over an acre. Eventually, Segovia had the thing sounding right. He looked at me and said, "Watch." I did. His performance was mesmerizing. He didn't use a pick. He plucked the strings with a combination of his fingertips and his fingernails, which were long but manicured. The difference in tonal quality was striking, and the fingers on his right hand moved like a group of practiced dancers. His left hand was more graceful, moving fluidly up and down the neck of my cheap guitar, which sounded heavenly in his capable hands. He wanted to show me that my guitar could produce beautiful music if the player's technique was good. I clapped when he stopped. It was the natural thing to do, and it was in no way premeditated. I had just witnessed the finest musical performance of my young life. "Gracias, Joven," he said. His demeanor changed imperceptibly. I think he was surprised a boy of my age, I was 11 or 12, could appreciate his musicianship. He handed my instrument back to me and reached to his case to retrieve his case on the floor to retrieve his. He brought his guitar to his lap and looked to see that I was holding mine correctly, which I was. I was imitating his example. These days they call it modeling. "Major scale, do as I do," he said. I nodded and repeated, "Major scale." He plucked 8 notes in succession, which I recognized from my piano lessons. "No, no," he said. I had been staring at his right hand plucking the strings. He took my head by the chin and aimed my eyes at his left hand. He played the 8-note sequence again. "No pattern," he said. "No sound." I already had the melody memorized, so I watched his fingers play the pattern over and over. "Watch carefully," he said. He moved his hand to different starting points on the low E string and played the scale again and again. "It's movable," I said. It was a light bulb over the head moment. "The pattern stays the same, but you can move it up or down." "Smart boy," he said. "5th string, same pattern." He moved up to the A string and played the scale repeatedly, showing me that it was movable up and down there, too. "4th string, D string, watch." This time the pattern on the fretboard was different, but the notes were still the same. "The pattern can change, but the notes don't. I can figure out the scale by the sound," I said. "Smart boy," the old man said with genuine enthusiasm. He patted my head in a rather rough manner. "Bring me paper," he said. "The newspaper?" "No," he said. "To write." He held an imaginary pencil in his hand and moved it in the air. "Yes, sir." He reached out very quickly and had my left wrist. "Maestro Segovia," he said very seriously. "If I am to be teacher, this is my name." It wasn't an admonishment. It was said in confidence. "Yes, Maestro Segovia," I said. "El papel," the paper. I stood up, smiling at Maestro Segovia, and ran out of my room to my father's study. I rapped on the door, lightly but persistent. Finally, the door opened, and my father stood over me with a stern expression. "Did you anger him?" "No, sir. Maestro Segovia wants some paper to write on." "Oh, okay." He went to his desk and returned with 8 or 10 sheets. "Will this be enough?" "I think so. Thanks, sir." "You're welcome, Stanton. How is the lesson going?" "Excellent, sir." My father smiled and said, "That's wonderful. I'll be down in a half hour to take him to the concert. Please tell him." "I will, father. You too will need this," he said, handing me a pen. I smiled up at him, happy to be his son. Maestro Segovia sat at the little desk in my room and took the sheets of paper from me. I stood beside him and watched. He turned the first piece sideways to have more length, and with the spine of a book as a ruler, drew 6 straight lines across the paper, unevenly spaced, which represented the strings. Then he drew slashes across them at intervals to indicate the frets. Next, he put dots on the strings to show the scale patterns. All of them started on the 6th string, the low E. Over the top, he wrote major and minor and Lydian along with all the others. Each scale took one sheet of paper, and he stopped when he ran out. I'm sure he could have kept going through another 20 pages. He handed the papers to me and said, "You memorize sound of the scales. You find patterns." "The patterns repeat?" I asked. "See, all scales must repeat notes. You will understand." "They're all like the major scale you showed me?" I asked, sensing my lesson was coming to a close. "Major scale is only scale. All scales come from major scale. I will show you some other time. I now show you chord shape to play all the songs. Not much time. Pay attention." He showed me my first bar chord, which unlocks the guitar for anyone who learns the instrument. You can go from a novice playing single note songs like Three Blind Mice to strumming along with the songs on the radio in the few minutes it takes to master the fingering. Okay, I'm going to stop right there for this episode. Thanks for being with me. And that was exactly 15 minutes. I'm at the bottom of page 12, and I'll be continuing there on the next episode. Have a good one.
The Paperback Rocker has signed off.